They're not. Okay, welcome everybody. We've got a combined total of over 30, so that's good at this stage of the retreat. I know for some of you the retreat has bitten quite deep, so I really appreciate people sticking with this retreat. Sometimes the spiritual life, when it bites deep, can be very uncomfortable, but I assure you it's worth it. But anyway, now this is the final day of the retreat, as you know, and it's time to start turning our minds to what specific things we'll be taking away with us from the retreat. Lucy, is everything okay? Okay, yeah. So what specific things we'll take away from the retreat to practice in our everyday life? It might be, for example, that we've decided that we're going to be more mindful of each of the 5 skandhas in our everyday life, to how they play out in our everyday lives, how we respond to them. And it might be that we said, okay, so now I understand the experience of each of the 5 skandhas, and in my meditation, I'm going to look at the nature of that interaction, just to investigate, for example, is there really a tangible self there which is interacting with the skandhas and saying, these are me, these are mine, these are myself. I don't know, whatever works for you, but I think it's really important that we do identify things which we're going to take away from this retreat to practice. It might be that you decide to reflect on the Heart Sutra for, say, 10 minutes a day for the next week, the next 2 weeks, the next month, up until Christmas or whatever. So myself and Dharmakarunya are going to kick this off. We're just going to say a few words about how we have and do practice with the Heart Sutra, and then we'll give you an opportunity to go into groups and discuss how you intend to practice the Heart Sutra following this retreat. Yeah? Okay. So, how should we do this? How do you want to do this? Do you want to start or me? Okay, so first of all, Dharmakarunya is going to say something about how she practices the Heart Sutra.
Okay, well, as I was saying yesterday, the Heart Sutra is a text that personally is really very, very dear to me. In my sort of early meeting with the Dharma, I think I was just blown away by the sort of vision of the Heart Sutra. And I think for quite a while, and maybe still didn't really understand it. And I think that one of the things that I am working with now is trying to not engage with the sutra in that kind of conceptual way. So one of the phrases that I find helpful in relating to the Heart Sutra, and perhaps you will too, is the notion of dwelling with the sutra, dwelling with the sutra. So I'm going to make a few suggestions of how you might do that and how I do that sometimes too. So my sort of first point is a phrase from Dado Rinpoche, which is cherishing the doctrine. Cherishing the doctrine. So how do we cherish the doctrine? Well, one of the things is we might want to learn. We've been chanting the Heart Sutra in Sanskrit each afternoon at 4 o'clock. And we've been doing so well with this, and it might be something that you want to carry on if that's something that you've been doing, or you might want to start if that's not something that you've been doing. So one of the things that I've been doing with that myself is it is quite long, relatively speaking, and we no longer live in a culture where we're used to memorizing things. But nonetheless, we can maybe just take the first section and build from there. So perhaps just taking the first section, a section that you might feel more confident about, and reciting it daily in front of your shrine before you begin meditation practice. That could be something you can do. So maybe learning a short extract by heart. By heart, yeah. Lovely phrase, isn't it? I think also living with the sutra in some way. So what might that look like for you? It's lovely to see all of you here today in the Lotus Hall, and particularly Dee, who, as part of your practice, you are a beautiful calligrapher. And I imagine that part of your practice is your calligraphy, and specifically, of course, the Heart Sutra, yes? So I'm not sure that we will be able to attain your heights of calligraphy, but nonetheless, one of the things that we can do is to, for example, copy the sutra out. One of the things I did on my ordination retreat, I was ordained as a Kashvana at 7 o'clock in the evening. That was my private ordination. So I had quite a long day. And I thought, how can I spend this day in a sort of, well, in a good way, in a good way. It's the day I'm getting ordained. And one of the things I did was I copied out the Ratnaguna Samchayagata. And I thought, it's another perfection of wisdom text. I could have done the Heart Sutra, of course, but the Ratnaguna Samchayagata was a text that I was reading at the time. So yeah, so copy the sutra out. If you have artistic talents, you could maybe decorate it or illuminate it in some way, and that allows us to reflect on the sutra. Another way of practicing with the sutra is engaging with an element of its contents. Mahashraddha's just given us a suggestion about taking one of the 5 skandhas, the work that we were doing with Tejananda, and investigating it in our direct experience. Yeah, so this is what we were doing with Tejananda. And Tejananda, of course, does do many retreats online and in person at Vajraloka. Notice that in February, for example, this is a bit of a trailer for Vajraloka perhaps, but in February, he's doing his Simply Being retreat. So on that retreat, he does those kinds of exercises, and that's an online retreat. So even if you're in Manchester and you're not able to get on retreat, you can do this online. So yeah, so looking at the skandhas. Another suggestion, just a few more I've got before I'll hand back to Mahashraddha, is a practice of visualization. One of the things that's happened to me this week is Prajna Paramita has felt very present with me. And Prajna Paramita usually is not my practice, and I'm an Amitabha practitioner, also a Padmasambhava practitioner. Need all the help that I can get sometimes in my practice. But Prajna Paramita has been very present for me. And for those of you who are able to go to Taraloka, there is, of course, a huge Prajna Paramita Rupa in the grounds of Taraloka. And that Rupa, because Taraloka is somewhere that I go often and have done for the last sort of 15 years, that Rupa has been very much part of my sort of broader practice. So a practice of bringing Prajna Paramita to mind. So how can we do this? Well, there are, of course, visualization practices that you can do. But to begin to develop a relationship with Prajna Paramita, Vasantara has written his books on the Buddhas and the female deities in Buddhism. So you can, if you're not really very familiar with her as a wisdom figure, you can read up on her initially and start to formulate and develop a connection with her. And in my experience, this phrase again, dwelling with the figures, allows us to open to them more fully, and for them to connect with us as well when we open to this other dimension of practice. Another area is one of the sort of elements of the Heart Sutra is, well, clearly shunyata, or emptiness, and insubstantiality. So reflecting on the lakshanas is another practice I would suggest. It's important also to bear in mind that these are strong teachings. They are teachings that can have a very strong effect. So this is why that as part of this retreat, we have been practicing the metta bhavana. It's important to have a base of positive emotion when we're reflecting on shunyata and dukkha and the lakshanas. Couple more points. Devotional practice. So again, on the retreat, we've been doing pujas. We've done a couple of pujas to Prajna Paramita the last couple of evenings, and we'll have our last puja this evening. But of course, you can do pujas anywhere, really, outside, at home, with others. So puja, long or short, is a very good way to cultivate this devotional aspect to our practice, the faith aspect to our practice, that our actions do have an effect. Our practice does have an effect. However, the ups and downs of our practice, it does have an effect. And devotional practice, again, allows us to open more. And then lastly, this is more on the kind of study side. Yes, engaging with the broader tradition of the perfection of wisdom. So if you've not encountered, Tejananda mentioned the suttas on emptiness, and I think we distributed the links to those earlier in the week. So if you're somebody who really enjoys studying the suttas and the sutras, then you can engage with texts in this broader tradition. And also the Diamond Sutra, very important for Sangharajta, of course, and the Ratnaguna Samchayagata. So I suppose engaging with what I would call proximate texts, and texts that are a part of this broader perfection of wisdom tradition. Okay, and then lastly, as we'll be doing so this morning we'll be, we're having this session now, but we're also going to be inviting you to go into groups in the second part this morning. And there you can begin to reflect and maybe discuss and share how you'd like to take your practice further based on what we've been doing this week. Okay.
Thank you very much, Dharmakarunya. I found that useful. So I'm going to just say a few words now about, well, my relationship to the Heart Sutra. And as I'll come on to a little later, it's become a really important text to me for reasons which I'll come on to a little later as well. But I think the first thing to say, and this is from my own experience, how we actually practice the Heart Sutra will be individual to us. And also, it will change over time as our spiritual practice matures. So, for example, for me, my first initial interactions with the Heart Sutra were very much on a metaphysical basis. I was fascinated by the concepts of which we find in the Heart Sutra, fascinated by emptiness, because I was coming. I think the first time I heard it, I was still active in scientific research, so obviously concepts are very important in science. But also, I was fortunate enough to be blessed with a very keen sense of wonder as well. So it wasn't everything, but concepts weren't everything by any means. But I was initially a metaphysical bunny, in my interaction with the Heart Sutra. But now it's not that at all. It's the 5 skandhas meditation and the kind of the reflections which Tejananda was taking us through have now become my main practice of the Heart Sutra. I think that's it for me. I practice the Heart Sutra through, first of all, becoming aware of the 5 skandhas, and then looking at my relationship to the 5 skandhas in light of the perfection of wisdom. Do I interact with the 5 skandhas in a way that creates suffering, or do I interact with the 5 skandhas in a way which leads to freedom and liberation? And that is on my mind a lot, actually, these days. And of course, central to that is the practice of mindfulness. And also central to that is that I want to practice the Heart Sutra. I want to. So I think it's really important that we engage with probably a text in our lives, a key text. For me, it's become the Heart Sutra. For you, it might be something different. But for me, before the Heart Sutra, it was Pinga's Praise of the Ways to the Beyond. You know, the place of Shraddha in the spiritual life. But now it is the Heart Sutra. I do believe that the words of the Heart Sutra do allay all dukkha. I think that's the key for me. I do believe that the vision of existence being offered to me by the Heart Sutra is how things really are and will lead to liberation. And I've had glimpses of it. You know, I've had glimpses of this truth. I mean, I won't bore you because I know I keep referring to this, but, you know, I had a glimpse of this during a near-death experience following a near-fatal stroke, which confirmed, to me anyway, the truth of the Heart Sutra. It's like, I think death, you have to let go of everything. And initially that was absolutely terrifying. But once I settled down into Shraddha, it was beautiful. There was no me, there was no mine, there was no myself. There was just energy, and in my experience, and it just confirmed the truth of the Heart Sutra. And I think that's when the Heart Sutra became really my key text at that point. I thought, yeah, these words really speak to me on the truth. I think the Heart Sutra requires a committed spiritual life. You know, if we're really going to take on board the message of the Heart Sutra, I think we need to be committed to, well, change, I guess. Are we really up for change? And are we open to the truths being communicated by the Heart Sutra? Do we want to listen to them, or do we just want to, you know, have the Heart Sutra in our lives as a nice to have, as a little bolt-on to, you know, for a metaphysical titillation on a Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday evening, or whenever you want to get titillated. So I think for me, the crux of the Heart Sutra is I want to listen to the Heart Sutra deeply because I believe it's truth. And I just want to say 3 particular aspects of my practice of the Heart Sutra. Firstly, the role of the imagination. I think the imagination is really important, as you touched upon, in the practice of the Heart Sutra. I think it's really important that we imagine what it's like to hold on to nothing whatever. I think it's really important that we imagine what it's like to experience the senses our interaction with the senses, I should say, in a different way. And after the session this morning, I went for a coffee, and I was just imagining, as I was aware of the sensations of the hot milk and so on and so forth, I was just being aware of my interactions with those sensations and just imagining what it'd be like not to self around those sensations, just to, as Tejananda says, there's the 5 skandhas, and then we add something onto those 5 skandhas, and that something is me, mine, myself. So just imagining what, and just imagining what it'd be like to just experience a sensation. So I think imagination is really important, and it's really interesting. Although I was metaphysically titillated, I was titillated by the metaphysics of the Heart Sutra, I didn't really have a relationship with Pranayama until 5 years or so after my ordination. I was given Shakyamuni as a visualization practice on ordination. And then suddenly Shakyamuni started to morph into Pranayama. And I thought, this is weird. I've got no connection with Pranayama. And it happened again, and it happened again, until eventually there was no morphing. It was just Pranayama in front of me. So I spoke with my preceptors, my private and public preceptors, and eventually I was given the Pranayama sadhana practice as my second practice. So it's really quite, I think it's really exciting sometimes how the spiritual life can just unfold in unexpected ways. But I think the unfoldment of the spiritual life for me has been very much, the imagination has been key to that unfoldment. So first thing, imagining what it's like to look through the eyes of the Heart Sutra on our own experience and the world. The second thing is renunciation has been an important practice, important part of my practice of the Heart Sutra. I don't mean walking away from stuff necessarily. What I mean in particular is renunciation of deeply rooted, habitual, in particular negative views and emotions in particular. Especially when especially when the selfing causes but the potential damage to myself and others. For example, with anger, I think that actually that's really important. It's like we're all going to have our individual triggers, which would lead to suffering. To selfing. Well, actually, and suffering. So what are they? What are they for you? For me, it was anger. I used to have real flashes of deep anger. When I used to play squash, this was before I was a Buddhist, I used to punch walls and break rackets. But in the end, people refused to play with me. I used to get really, really, really angry. Not that I wanted to damage people. I just wanted to damage something to get rid of this anger. So I think, just being aware of what particularly I self around, and then trying to renounce instead of, so experiencing the anger, but not necessarily acting upon it, and renouncing the habitual response and the anger, and instead experience the anger and say, well, what is this? What is this? How do I work? What's the nature of anger, and so on. So renouncing selfing, which is really difficult to do. And then dramas. I mentioned this in a question to Tejananda on his second session. I think over the years of my practice of the Heart Sutra, I've renounced dramas to not entirely, but I used to get really wound up by life, and and oh no, this is happening again. But what the Heart Sutra has taught me to do is that I don't need to dramatize life. I really don't need to. Things are as they are. But what I did need to was to understand why I was dramatizing. And that's been really, really, really useful. The reason why I think I dramatize life is because of my conditioning. I was conditioned to fix things immediately, because if I didn't, I got criticized or beaten. So the dramas were towards fixing things straight, because until they were fixed, I was in a state of anxiety, expecting, or whatever it was. So fear was creating dramas, and that was a real important turning point for me, understanding what drove the drama. And of course, dramas kept me away from experiencing the direct truth of the Heart Sutra. So yeah, that's been really useful. Look at what keeps you, or looking at what kept me at a distance from a direct experience of the Heart Sutra. And for me, it was fear, actually. Yeah, and just seeing, the Heart Sutra says, its words allay all suffering. Really? Is that true? Well, find out for yourself. That's a question for me, which I answer, because during the dramas, it created suffering. I became edgy, I became anxious, I became narrow in my perspective on life, and it caused suffering, it caused dukkha. So yeah, actually the Heart Sutra, the words of the Heart Sutra are true. When I'm more relaxed and expansive, there's less dukkha for myself and for others. And finally, the final thing I want to say is, I found it really useful to look at different translations of the Heart Sutra, because they all have they all bring out something new, something interesting, something different, something explanatory. So it's like no eye, ear, nose, for example, might be one translation, but another translation might be I do not perceive eye, I do not perceive nose, and so on. And those two translations put together, for me, make sense. And also, finally, the looking at the lesser and greater Shunyata suttas, which we sent the links to you. Those are really, really good in terms of the Buddha speaking about Shunyata in the Pali Canon. So that's what I have to say.
Well, thank you, Mahashraddha. That was really, really helpful, and thanks for sharing your experience as well. Yeah. Okay, well, we'll now have a short break, and what we're going to be doing then this morning is giving you the opportunity to meet in small groups. I mean, it's about 11:05 now, so if we restart at 1:15, then that gives them. Yeah. Okay, we'll restart at 11:15 in your groups, and so this is an opportunity for you to share how you might like to set an intention to practice with the Heart Sutra, from how you've engaged with it this week and what is coming alive for you around the sutra. Okay, so we'll take a break now, and we'll be back at 11:15.
Right.